Hi there, welcome to Mark Kinnan's channel. We are coming to you from Durban, South Africa, and we are doing a very special artist profile. This is an old and dear friend of mine, Nibs van der Spuy. Welcome.
Good to see you, Mark.
Good to see you, Nibs, as always.
Lovely.
So just a little bit of background. Nibs and I have known each other a really long time, almost 40 years. I think we met way back in 1980, Murtu, like 1980.
1982, I think, yes.
So that's like 39 years.
It's 40 years this year.
Blimey. Nibs and I had our first band together in 1983, I believe.
82, I think they...
Was it 82?
Yeah, it was midway through 82, yes.
So we were in our first musical experience as a band together. The band was called Mirage 5. This is back in Benoni, where Nibs and I both come from. And the likes of Charlize Theron come from there, or Theron for some.
Princess Charlene of Monaco.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, Benoni's close to Johannesburg. It's on the map, and that's where we come from. But we share a lot of similarities in our lives and our development in our careers. We both born and bred in Benoni. We both moved to Durban for our studies after school. We both studied music. And Nibs went on to have a couple of bands in Durban that did very well, Plagal Cadence being one of them, and then Landscape Prayers, and with both of those acts he toured around South Africa and even some in Europe and France and so forth. And then since then Nibs has had a very illustrious and wonderful career as a solo artist, singing, playing guitar, and writing his own songs, traveling all over the world. Sometimes does these great duets with different people. Very interesting stuff. He's got a lot of records out. So a really interesting career. And I want to introduce Nibs to you. And Nibs is going to show us one of his very special instruments that he's been playing a lot lately, the Cuatro. So let me hand it over to you and tell me a little bit about this instrument and why this instrument.
Well, this instrument kind of landed on my lap by default. I was doing some gigs in England, and I was staying at my sister's house in Surrey, and I got home the one night, and there was an Amazon parcel at the front door. I could see it was a guitar box. It was so I naturally thought it was for my nephew. He was 10 at the time because he was keen to play guitar, and unbeknownst to me, it was actually the gift was for me, and it was a Cuatro. It's my first Cuatro, and my sister just happened to be on this traditional music site called Hobgoblin Music.
Okay.
You can buy hurdy-gurdies, you can buy lutes, you can buy, all traditional instruments. And she saw this interesting-looking instrument called the Cuatro, and she decided Puerto Rican Cuatro, and that was for me. I opened the box and I'd never seen anything like it. I thought, what was it? Is it a violin? And odd looking shape. I didn't even know how to play it, Yeah. I didn't even know the tuning.
Yeah.
And
because for all of you out there, it's a different tuning to a guitar. I mean, we'll probably get to that.
Well, yeah. But so I YouTubed it. I thought like Cuatro, Puerto Rican Cuatro, and then kind of it was when I saw it being played like on YouTube, like to an ensemble situation, it was, I kind of equated it to the way a mandolin's played in an ensemble in like Eastern Europe or Western Europe, where it's kind of used as a coloring instrument, like usually like played with tremolo, and I didn't see it as like a chordal instrument. It was just more, and I was kind of, I'm not really a fan with South American music at all, I think, we, living in South Africa, we all got the Buena Vista Social Club album, which was Cuban music. So that was, I kind of equated all South American music to the Cuban music I heard, which, it's vastly different in many ways. So that wasn't kind of for me. And then I thought, how do you tune the thing? And there was no like a manual with the guitar, just arrived and looked with pup strings or loose strings, So they said, well, you tune it like a 5-string bass. So that was interesting. So as you see, like you've got 5 courses, and your low strings are like you've got the B, like the B note octaves, and then like the guitar, you've got the E in octaves, and then and then you've got the A, D, and G in unison. So that was a start. I said, well, I'm kind of familiar with that, and then I just started noodling with it. Like having a new instrument is always quite kind of exciting because it's like you don't know how to play it, you don't know how it's meant to be played, and I mean there weren't any courses on how to play it, which I could find at the time. So I just picked it up and just started noodling on it, and it was amazing how many ideas came within the first few days. Written my first song in the first day already. It was kind of the sound resonated with me. Not kind of sounded a bit like a 12 string in the beginning, but not really. It's like so the ideas flowed very quickly, and within a week I'd written a few pieces already, and thought this is going to be interesting. And I think it's what's interesting, and you'll know as well, when you confronted with a new instrument, especially like I'm a guitarist and playing for many years, for over 40 years, and it's often hard to break through that barrier. You often hit the wall for inspiration.
Right.
Your fingers keep on doing the patterns or the pathways they've known for years, and sometimes hard to...
It's like muscle memory.
It's muscle memories, and sometimes difficult to break out of the pathways which you know, and you've practiced for years.
No, exactly.
And it can be frustrating sometimes. It's like you hit the musical doldrums.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
I think in my case, and this is partly responsible for this YouTube channel even existing, is just the multitude of instruments that I collect.
Yeah.
A large part of that is every movie project I do, I have to find something to keep that creative thing going, because if I just try and do the same thing,
yes.
So I have this tradition where it's either a new instrument I'm going to buy and try and learn to play, or it's a new technique I'm going to learn, or a new electronic instrument I'm going to buy.
Yes.
There has to be something to keep that creative spark going.
Absolutely. So I think when you're excited with a new instrument in your hands and you noodle with it. You don't. I think any musician can pick up an instrument and they're going to want to make music with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes the instrument might resonate with them, or sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And this certainly did.
Yeah.
A few months previously, I had received the soundtrack for the Motorcycle Diaries, and the soundtrack was written by Gustavo
Santaolalla.
Okay. And I love the theme song for Motorcycle Diaries.
Yeah.
And when I received my Cuatro, in my mind, the Cuatro was the same instrument he had used as like the main instrument for the main theme song for that song. I don't think it was.
Right.
Do you know what that instrument
is? It might
is?
have been Ronroco, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know that soundtrack intimately. But that's basically what he's played on most of his soundtracks.
Okay, that's
he's known for
interesting.
Ronroco. He's got an album called Ronroco, which is beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful, yeah. So that's so that kind of inspired me at the same time, just to like pick it up and to start noodling.
Yeah.
Really
but it's
good.
sort of the same vibe as this, except the Ronroco's gut strings.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
So,
yeah.
I think maybe it's even a very similar range.
What is
strings in octaves?
And what is the difference between a Ronroco and a Charango from Bolivia?
They are exactly the same instrument, but the charango's smaller and is an octave up.
Okay.
Exactly the same tuning, just an octave down for the Ronroco.
Okay, interesting.
So it's an interesting tuning. There are different types of tuning, but some of the strings are in fifths, and some of them are in... Well, go and watch my Ronroco video to get that right. Well, tell me, how was it, so just getting back to a sort of technical thing, is it really different fingering from the guitar, because you've got all the strings laid out in fourths?
Yes. It kind of...
Does it require completely relearning how to...
Yeah, very, very much so. First of all, to be honest with you, it's not the easiest instrument to play on your left hand. It's like, I guess, picking up a banjo for the first time. It's like you get railway tracks in your fingers, and it's like, it's not easy. So I've had to, like, when I started noodling and started writing pieces on it, I wasn't holding chords. I was like suggesting chords.
Gotcha.
And kind of 2-note chords really, and then coming up with, I'll just give you like a little example. So if I'm playing something, I think in the key of D, I'm not holding a D chord. So you can see I'm holding like It's in G. Sorry. So I'm not holding a full G chord or finding like the full G chord. I'm kind of suggesting the D chord with the root and the fourth. So I was just writing like simple riffs which sounded cool. Always only holding 2 notes of the chord. And I'm playing, suggesting the bass note only when I play it when I need it. If I was trying to hold it in, it's like crump up, and also you'll have intonation problems as well if you kind of slightly off or yeah, and it just kind of progressed from there. And I remember I was in the studio. I mean, I just received the Cuatro like a few weeks before I was recording the album at the time, which was called The Bird in the Hand, 2008. And I remember I was writing fast and furious in it. I didn't want to pick up the guitar. I was just so excited with the Cuatro. And it was like a 70-pound job. It was called the Blue Moon Cuatro. I mean, a honky sound, but I just loved it, you know. And I thought, I'm in the studio, I've been writing a song. I've got to include a song with the Cuatro, and I did. So, yeah. And like every album since then, I've included the Cuatro. And
when you tour these days, is this kind of your main instrument, or
not my instruments, but like for example, I've got a gig with this great young guitarist called Guy Battery, and I play 75% Cuatro, maybe 25% guitar. So it's actually beautiful with Cuatro and guitar together. Sound fantastic.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah.
And we kind of interweave these like progressions together, and sounds great.
And Guy's a great sitar player too.
Yes.
Have you mixed sitar and?
No, it doesn't work. And
Okay.
I also did a tour with an Iranian musician, Yasemin Shah Hosseini, and I thought this is going to sound great with oud and Cuatro, but it didn't work. No, it didn't work.
And why would you say that is?
It just, I don't know, the registers somehow just didn't correlate, you know, just, so I don't know what happened. Just the keys, the way it's tuned, and the temperament of this instrument just didn't work.
Yeah, I guess like bagpipe and soprano sax wouldn't be.
Wouldn't work. Well, maybe it would.
Well, who knows, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty about music. It's, like,
Yes.
it's all about just figuring it out. And,
Yes.
You know, and to that point, I sometimes come across this issue on my YouTube channel where people say, "Well, you know, you're kind of faking it, or you're not real because you're not playing it in the proper way it's
Yes.
supposed to be played." What do you feel about that?
I don't really care.
criticism?
It's, people have often said back. I mean, I always tell people when I pick up the guitar because I use this a lot for my solo gigs, and I'm always forever still writing songs or little instrumentals on the. What I tell people from the outset, I don't know how to play it properly, and I always get like a few sniggers and laughs from the crowd. So at least I set the mood that I don't play it properly. Yeah.
No, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean anything because absolutely there would be no Cuatro, there'd be no instrument if it wasn't for the fact that someone took another instrument, didn't really know how to play it traditionally,
Yes.
made it his own, incorporated
Exactly.
some of his culture into it.
Of course.
And then so it progresses.
Of course. And you can say that with any, like, I mean, the piano, for example. I mean, I guess the piano, when it was first introduced to the world, it was maybe I'm wrong, but it was made for classical music.
Yeah.
You know, and then came all these other styles in the centuries to come, like jazz or
And
world music. Changed me out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it applies to any instrument. You know, it's like, you know, like the classical guitar. It's like it was made for the classical guitar, but I mean the classical guitar is the heartbeat of all Brazilian like guitarists use that. I don't ever see a Brazilian playing a steel string guitar. They're playing like a classical nylon string guitar, but they're doing their sambas and their bosses and their
and then the same instrument in the southern part of Spain, flamenco.
Yes, exactly.
A totally different thing being done with it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Now, why don't you play us something? I don't know, anything you want. Show us what this baby can do.
I think so. You know, and I always I tell people at concerts now, like the Cuatro for me is like a chameleon of an instrument. Mm-hmm. Sometimes like in my mind, it can sound like like a Elizabethan or a medieval instrument. Sometimes it'll sound like an African instrument, or sometimes it'll sound like a mandolin, sometimes like a banjo. So I remember one of the first tunes I played, I was in England, I was doing it too. I've just got this Cuatro, so I'm going around the country, I've had some gigs all over the show, and I remember I couldn't take my hands off my 70-pound Cuatro. And I remember my granny comes from Yorkshire, and there's a little town there near the Yorkshire moors called Apple Tree Wick, and it's like an old medieval town. And I remember going back to my accommodation, coming up with this little piece, which in my mind sounded like almost harpsichordish, if you think. So I always thought like that had like a bit of a harpsichord.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I always had I was writing tons of instrumentals and even some vocal songs in it, and then also had had an African vibe to it as well, you know. So let me just and this I cross pick with mainly I play 95% with our finger stylus, you know.
Gotcha.
You know, but I've got a couple of tunes which I've written where I actually cross pick.
Is that traditional? Do they normally play Cuatro with?
Actually play with a pick. Okay. You know, I've seen I don't know anything about it really, but the YouTube footage I've seen of traditional Puerto Rican man, they're kind of using it like tremoloing it as well, like a mandolin, the way they do with mandolin. You know, and you actually need a pick. You know,
Right.
I'm not holding full. I'm actually suggesting the chord as I play it, because if I had to hold the chord, and my finger would cramp up.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. So, speak to me a little bit about, or maybe run us through, because I remember when I first met you, it was amazing. You introduced me to music I'd never heard of before. I think you introduced me to the Doors. I think you played me Bob Seger.
Yes.
You had these, and you would buy records, and you would buy two so that you would play one and wear it out and still have the
Still
one
have a
closed.
spare one, yeah. I was like that.
Yeah, Nibs is like the record collector, like super, super serious about it.
I am, yeah. It was kind of like, you got, I mean, growing up in I'd say maybe like a non-musical environment, really. We grew up on this town called Benoni, which was a former mining town east of Johannesburg, surrounded by mine dumps and industry. Yeah. And you wouldn't expect like an ounce of creative to flow out of this little this town. When we were at school, it was a town of 80,000 people. But I think it's just that was, and it's amazing how, I mean, my father was an airline pilot, so, you know, he traveled the world and he taught us about other cultures on his travels before internet or anything like that. So you learn through encyclopedias and from first-hand stories, you know, and so I think, and then also obviously having an older brother, I shared an older room with my older brother, and so my first introduction to music was actually inadvertently through my grandmother, who was from Yorkshire in England. So in the 60s, she used to go back home to visit her family and used to come back home with the latest Beatles album. Right. So I'm sharing a room with my brother. I'm 2 or 3 years old, and I'm going to sleep to A Hard Day's Night or Beatles for Sale or Rubber Soul, you know, and I think, wow, this is exciting, you know. So there was always music in the house, and my dad, he was a fighter pilot in the Second World War in Korea. You know, I remember my dad playing 4 chords on the guitar. He played them very well. But my dad, without knowing who Hank Williams was, singing Hey Good Looking, you know, which he had learned at the Air Force Base in Korea, the US Air Force Base in Korea. Right. And then my mom was a classical pianist. You know, she didn't study music after school, but I mean, she studied through all her high school years, and before that, she was playing classical music. So the house was always filled with a diversity of music.
Gotcha. And were you taking lessons?
Not at all. I mean, my sisters took piano lessons because my mother was the pianist. My dad was a 4-chord player, so you didn't need lessons to play 4 chords. But from the time I picked the guitar up really seriously in 1980, I started writing my own music. Yeah. I've still got like all my lyrics books and my chords I had for the songs from that time, you know. Wow. And in those days when you're young, I mean, you could write 30 songs in a year, no problem.
Exactly. You should go back and do an album of songs you did before you were 16 or something like that, right?
Actually, it's funny, like on my Beautiful Feet album, that was 2005, I included a song I wrote in 1982. Okay. Called It's a Sad Day, you know. Yeah. Kind of made into a reggae version of it. Yeah. 3-chord wonder, but it was a cool song, you know, for the time.
And so when we met, I think I was 15. You
maybe a year older than you. Yes.
Where were you at that point? Were you writing every day? Was it an obsession for you?
It was an obsession, you know. My father being an airline pilot, I mean, every young boy has got dreams and aspirations of being a pilot. Mm. But when the musical bug kicked in, and heaven started opening up when I could play Eleanor Rigby or a Beatles song, or play with Fire by the Stones, which was also like 3 chords. I thought, man, it's going to be hard to change my dreams, which like I want to do this, you know. Yeah. I can become a pilot on the sideline or like for part time, but my dad always said like, but you can always play music on the side. Do something like have a career in this, but I said no, it's all or nothing.
It's kind of the other way around.
Yeah. No, all or nothing, and so that's where the journey started. And playing in the first band with you, it was a really exciting time. Yeah. And I think during that time as well, it was in South Africa especially. It was before the birth of our democracy, but there were a lot of bands playing their own music. Yeah. You know, there were bands like writing their own songs with writing about their environment and using even like African inflections, like white bands like Evoid,
were bright blue,
but had like
some political sort of message behind it. It wasn't overt enough to get into trouble.
Yes, exactly. But with like traditional inflections in the music.
Exactly.
You know, which was so it was an exciting time. There was like a slow melting pot of like
Yeah.
things starting to explode, which is
Exactly,
great.
and you know, Johnny Clegg was a was a shining light
Yes.
in that regard.
Yeah.
Because even in those days, ironically enough, I mean, we all knew those guys, but
Yes.
but they were strictly speaking an illegal band because they were
Multiracial.
multiracial.
Multiracial,
Yeah.
you know. Exactly, you know. It's,
Crazy times, eh?
Crazy times.
Yeah.
Not so long ago.
Yeah.
Not so long ago, you know. Just touring in East Germany recently, kind of like going to Checkpoint Charlie, and I think it's not so long ago.
Yeah.
The Berlin Wall came down in 1990.
Yeah.
It's not so long ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's also kind of, if you think about it, you know, growing up in apartheid, growing up separately and going to university, and then your class is multiracial, and you're learning these like array of styles which are just the heartbeat of this country, which we weren't aware of really.
Yeah.
We didn't know African music then
At all.
we didn't know what Maskandi was.
No.
You know.
And it kind of hit us in, you know, not just a, you know, it wasn't a trickle, it was just a big tsunami wave. Once we got to university, all of that opened up at the same time. Not just, you know, Maskandi and the sort of Zulu music that surrounded us, and then learning about Indian music and learning about all the traditional musics of the San and all this stuff just hit us. It was just an amazing
But
time.
it was, and like to be part of the heartbeat of, especially in Durban, which has got the biggest Indian population outside India, and going to the city hall on a Thursday night and watching these incredible musicians out from India, doing their thing. You know, I think this is wild.
Playing these funny little pots with skin on it.
No.
Later known as a tabla.
Exactly.
Like, how do you do that?
Exactly.
With your finger, like crazy stuff.
And I mean, even like seeing like some great sitar players and thinking, and not knowing that like the sitar, like the resonator of the sitar is made from a pumpkin.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. You
Exactly.
know? And very powerful time. And I still remember I was like precocious and had the gumption enough I'd written some like African, in my mind, I thought like Maskandi, which is the traditional guitar music of KwaZulu-Natal, written like some tunes which had like maybe some African or Maskandi inflections, but entering these Maskandi competitions, being the only white guy amongst these traditional guys who like lived it and was part of their heartbeat and part of their upbringing. You've got this white guy from Benoni, conservative Benoni, like, but they loved it. I thought, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you remember those things, I mean, spend the whole day at the university and I think in the one gymnasium where they were actually having these competitions, going there and doing it. I think, look back now and thought, you had a cheek. You were precocious.
Right.
Love to do it, but we did it, you know.
And the amazing thing is, what you find out when you start being interested in other cultures is that they love it when you do it respectfully, when you inquire about their culture.
Yeah.
Out of respect. It's like learning languages.
Exactly.
You know, you and I both share a passion for languages.
Yes.
It's the same thing.
You just break barriers,
break barriers.
completely, like immediately. Through the language, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And music.
And music, which is universal, you know.
Yeah.
It really is. Well, before I play something else, I just wanted to ask you while we're on that train of thought. We both speak Latin languages. I mean, you speak Spanish, I speak Portuguese because I live in Lisbon most of the year. And this is called a cuatro. And if you've got a grasp of any Latin language, cuatro means four.
Right.
So, but if you look at this, it's got five courses.
10 strings,
10 strings. So, did you know maybe the history of like why?
You know, I the little bit I looked up, the cuatro that you find in Venezuela is also called a cuatro.
Yes.
That does have 4 strings.
Yes. But then they call it the Venezuelan cuatro.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. I have a cuatro which looks very similar, but I think it's a bigger. I think
It's bigger. Next scale. Yeah, next
bigger.
scale. Yes.
And that cuatro came from, if I'm not mistaken, Bolivia or Peru.
Yes.
I can't remember.
Will you get the Bolivian cuatro?
I also ordered it on Lark in the Morning, which is our version of your hobnob, probably.
Is it okay? Oh, is it also traditional music?
Exactly.
Is that,
All
okay.
sorts of weird instruments. They're up in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
And I bought a lot of instruments from them in the past.
Okay.
So I don't really know, but from what I understand, it used to be, the cuatro came from the vihuela, which is the Spanish precursor to this, and same thing happened in Mexico with, with the Bajo Quinto, for example. Someone just said, oh, I need something lower, or I need something higher. And so probably that's what happened, but I don't really know.
Well, my understanding, because I mean, just the basic things I picked up on the net and that, so they said like the cuatro, this Puerto Rican cuatro is like kind of was born 500 years ago. It's about 500 years. So maybe it did have 4 courses, and maybe the last 150 years they added the 5th course, and
which is not a weird thing, because the chitarra battente that we were talking about yesterday, the Italian guitar that basically came from the Baroque guitar, which was very popular at the time, is widely believed to be a big influence on some of the stringed instruments that made it to Mexico. That had 5 courses of 10 strings.
Okay, that's
which
interesting.
is why the Bajo Quinto is Bajo Quinto. It has 5 courses. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that there was a lot of osmosis going on between all these instruments.
Sure. But you've got this array of instruments in your studio. I mean, I love watching your channel because I see all these beautiful instruments behind you, and I always think, when is he going to haul that one out?
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you're doing a score on that, do you kind of, and you think, well, I can hear that sound in it, or it's the sound, the instrument is like affiliated to the soundtrack you're doing. Do you just pick it up like the way I've done with the Cuatro and just noodle with it, or do you kind of do a bit of research of how it's played, or do you go to the YouTube channel and see how it's meant to be played, or do you just kind of...
I'll kind of start not doing that. I'll basically start with just the idea of trying to... So very often what I'll do is I'll look through the movie and then find a scene that I feel sort of represents the soul of the movie, whether it's the last scene in the movie or the first or wherever it is, a scene that really exemplifies what the story is the movie's trying to tell. And I'll put that up on the monitor. Now I don't do this anymore, but I used to just say, well, in this movie maybe I'm going to use that instrument, maybe that instrument. Let me pick a little band, a little orchestra of instruments that I feel I might use. I'd pack them into the car and I'd go down to my place in Mexico. And I'd sit there for a couple of weeks with these instruments and play that scene on the video screen again and again, just to repeat. And I'd pick up an instrument and I'd play it along and see if anything happens. And I'd pick up another one and, okay, that's kind of cool. Well, let me record that idea. And so it's an improvisation, really, to picture.
That's interesting, Yes.
And then if I feel, I really want to do something more with this, but I can't do that physically, maybe I should go and look at a YouTube video. How do you actually play this thing? Or indeed, how do you tune it? Because sometimes these instruments
you don't know how to tune it wrong.
And so basically I'll do that to the extent that I need to accomplish what I'm trying to do in the film score. If when I look at that I feel, okay, well, that is just way too complicated. I'll never get to that point where I want to, on this instrument, to be able to say what I'm trying to say. That's when I'll just say, okay, I'm going to hire someone to play that for me. Which obviously happens often. But in the writing process, it's really a process of improvisation and
sonic inspiration and sonic color. In
fact, they're basically not that different. Whether it's a melody, whether it's a sonic color. Sometimes it's even sound making. Recently I did a movie where I bought an electric guitar and we had tremolo arm and a lot of pedals, which I've never done before. And I sort of ended up making sounds with them that a lot of them you would listen to and not even know it's electric guitar. Amazing.
And that's actually funny. It's interesting, like sometimes going to the YouTube channel, or like you've just bought a guitar with loads of pedals, natural thing is let me listen to someone like a Mark Ribot, or like listen to someone like a Bill Frisell, for example, which I love. But sometimes it's actually great that you don't. It's just like you kind of like using your intuition to kind of get those things and kind of having that unique sound, which is
kind of why I get into trouble sometimes from listeners on my YouTube channel, because most of the time am not playing the instrument correctly at all. and something to irritate some people. Like, why aren't you playing it properly?
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't care, because my career, and indeed my YouTube channel, is geared at people like me.
Yes.
Who want instruments to inspire them.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about.
I'm not an academic. I'm not going to university to learn how to play whatever instrument properly. That's not my purpose.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Yeah, and I think for you, it's similar.
It's an expression. It's an expression, and I mean, it's an expression, and expression which is kind of a continual expression. I'll be like, for example, I was sitting when I first moved to Lisbon. I didn't really know Fado at all, and I was sitting in a Fado club in the Alfama, which is the old fishing quarter of Lisbon, where all the Fado clubs are. And I remember going to a Fado concert, and seeing the instrumentation was normal, like a acoustic guitar, but also the heartbeat of the musical canvas was played with it's like a 5-course guitar with a Portuguese guitar, which has its tuning like a fan. It's got like a fan of tuning pegs at the top, and it kind of looks a bit like a lute.
Okay.
Which is that shimmery double course sound which you hear in Fado music, you know, which has been there from the outset.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you try to sit down and play Fado, or try and sort of
no, it's like I call like it's also it's Portuguese blues. It's like from Lisbon, and they also do it in Coimbra, which is a university town a little bit north. And no, it's like it's very sad. It's sad song form. And I mean, you know, you've got the Fado repertoire, which has, I mean, a lot of the Fado repertoire comes from like the 1800s already, you know, which people are still playing today.
Música triste.
Música muito triste. Yeah. And but I mean, it's I remember these guys, I mean, in these Fado clubs are just virtuosos, like on the instruments, you know, and especially the Portuguese guitar. And I remember just being inspired by the sonic composition or what they're doing on the Portuguese guitar. They went back and kind of wrote this one song just from listening to Fado. So I'm saying is like your influence, you draw from so many influential bags, you know.
Yeah.
And this one I've included on my last studio album, Natalia. It's called Oxala. I think in Spanish you use the word enchila. It comes from the Moors. It comes from Arabic. Oxala means God willing.
Oxala.
Oxala. Okay, is it Oxala?
Yeah.
And Portuguese you spell it Oxala. Oxala.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's either like and it's a real Lisbon expression. Oxala sim, Oxala now. Okay. Oxala sim means like God, yes, God willing. Okay. And then Oxala no. So I thought that's a pretty cool.
Yeah.
I remember the Grateful Dead had I think their third album was called Oxo Moxo, which is spelled AOX. Oxo, AOXO, Moxo, MOXO, Oxo Moxo. And when I saw Oxala, it kind of reminded me of that Grateful Dead.
Right.
So, let me just So that was one night just from being in a Fado club.
Right.
It doesn't sound like Fado,
No,
but it was
you
just
can hear the root of it.
Guess so,
Even
yeah.
though it's in Maiden, it doesn't sound triste. So I'm sitting here with my very dear friend Nibs van der Spuy, listening to some amazing music that he's playing on his Cuatro, and having some amazing and interesting conversation. Now tell me a bit about your life. So you live sort of half your time here in Durban and then the other half in Lisbon?
Yeah, what happened now, I mean, because I play in Europe a lot, I was kind of doing sometimes 4, sometimes 5 trips a year for even like 3 gigs, like in Italy or something. Come back to Southern Fleur, and I thought, you know what, I need to sow seeds in another country. And it just happened, my younger sister, her and her husband were transferred from London to Portugal, and I just broken up with my French girlfriend. I was teary, I was depressed, and they said to me, come and visit us. So I went to Lisbon for 10 days. I had a gig in France, my last gig was in France, and a 10-day gap between some London gigs. Instead of wallowing in my own sorrow in France, they said, come to Lisbon. And I went there, and I just fell in love with Portugal. And obviously, over the years, I've been doing many tours and concerts in Mozambique, which is a former Portuguese colony. And when I got to Lisbon, it was like
the familiarity
of the architecture, and even like weirdly enough, the Africanism of I just felt like there was this. I felt homely there, and it was a time where.
Now, when you say Africans, you mean just because there's a large community of
Mozambicans
in
Mozambicans,
and
Angolans, Cabo Verdeans, which I love Mozambican culture, and I was in Lisbon, I'm thinking, wow, but this is Africa, man. This is Africa. It is, like a lot of African Mozambican clubs or Angolan clubs there playing cool music. I thought, I'm feeling it. And it was at a time where, where it was affordable to buy an apartment there. So I managed to find my little studio apartment, which I still love and have, for a song. I wouldn't be able to buy that same apartment in downtown Durban for the same price, let alone like in Mozambique. And I got it at I got in at the right time. And although I don't really work in Portugal, it's a weird thing. I'm not sure if Spain's the same thing, but trying to do a career as a soloist and you're unknown, you're not part of the groove there. It's very difficult to make a living there.
So you do most of your touring work in what
countries?
In
France. I've been fortunate enough to play in Germany quite a bit. I go to England once a year. So I kind of chase work wherever I can, but it's been mainly France and England. Where I've been playing, where I've had slowly but surely over the years you get a bit of a following there, and it's all small gigs, small theatres, but enough to survive as a soloist. Wouldn't be able to survive as a band, in a band and occasionally I do these duo performances as well. On my travels, you find these fantastic musicians, and then you kind of dangle a carrot. Would you like to come and play in South Africa? Maybe we can't offer you loads of money, but I will take you to the game reserve, and you'll get to experience South African culture for where I live in, and that's been very successful. Like collaborating with different musicians. Always collaborating with someone different keeps the music alive. It really does.
So what is next for you? What's you have an album you're working on?
Yes, I am.
Tell us about
I suppose I live a very simple existence in Lisbon. I don't have a car. I've got bicycles. I live on the Lisbon coast with all these wonderful old historical monuments on the coastline. So every night I would escape from my apartment. Like normally at 9 o'clock at night, take a doorsveen. A box of wine. Take my guitar. I've got I call a braafvleis. In South Africa, braafvleis means barbecue. I've got my barbecue guitar or beach guitar. I used to go I sat all my Cuatro, my 70 euro Cuatro, and go and sit on the steps of this beautiful chapel called Capella Alta da Boa Viagem, which means the High Chapel to say goodbye to obviously the caravels going into the ocean.
Okay.
Old 16th century church. Sat there night after night, sometimes after midnight, and you could hear the birds singing. You couldn't hear the cars. So, I mean, things sprung to life again. You could hear the ocean roar down below. It was beautiful. And it was the most beautiful setting to write an album worth of new songs. So I kind of wrote 17 songs in that time. I was like a teenager again, like sort of writing furiously every day. So I kind of demoed 17 songs and we've chosen 10. So I've called the album Maiden of the River, just from living on where, I mean, I live in Lisbon where the Tagus River, which runs through Lisbon, enters the Atlantic Ocean. So it's been inspired. It's inspired by my last couple of years there in my journey in Portugal. Although it doesn't really have Portuguese inflections, it's kind of it's a singer-songwriter album. And
it's just you. You're not working with anyone else on it.
No. I'll have some guest artists, but pretty much like a bedsitter, a very acoustic album, singer-songwriter album. I've got 2 instrumentals on it. So that's my next thing. And I've also, on my travels, I did a wonderful tour a few years ago with this virtuoso oud player from Tehran. Her name is Yasemin Shah Hosseini. We did 15 shows around South Africa, and we managed to record an album a few days before she left at a French studio. So I'm going to try and release that this year as well.
Yeah, fantastic. You know that I've heard of that stuff.
Yeah, it was very. It was really.
That oud is an insane instrument.
It's so haunting.
I love it.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is, you know. And just hearing at the roots of old Persian music, which is like 2,000 years old. I mean, when Yasemin used to play, I used to, like Rumi's poems just became pronounced in my head, and
it's also really the godfather of every guitar instrument we have today. Really, the oud is the godfather.
No, there's a camera, and your camera can't see it, but there's that famous, I don't know who did it, like famous painting. Okay, that's a tapestry of the dude playing.
Is that a Renaissance lute?
No, a lute. Yeah, sorry, a lute. Playing a lute there, and I mean,
it looks like the oud.
Well, the lute was derived from the oud.
Yeah,
according to
exactly. Because it's the same shape.
Yes.
They just at one point added frets, which the oud doesn't have.
Yes, that's right.
Made the neck longer, right?
Yes, that's right.
Fascinating.
So it's fascinating, and I've learned so much from you today, just about like strings instruments. You've got with your channel, you've got such a knowledge of the instruments you employ into your soundtracks and that, and I've learned from you like things I don't know.
Ironically, I don't need and don't usually acquire that knowledge playing the instruments and doing what I do with them. It's when I come to make these videos, I better know kind of what I'm talking about. So I do a lot of research.
Well, when I watch your channel, it's like I kind of this is fantastic. I mean, it's such an educational thing. I love your channel.
Thank you.
I love it.
I love that you're on it.
I'm blessed. I'm very honored. I'm super honored. Yeah.
But there's one question I'd like to ask you, which is, you've, I think, always been quite religious.
Yes.
And that's one difference between us. I've not.
Yes.
What I'd like to ask you is, does that play any kind of role, or does it have any kind of influence in your music making?
It does.
And if so, what is that? How does it influence?
Well, I mean, I think music comes from that source. You know, before I go into the religion of it, like when you listen to the testimonies of singer-songwriters or any musician who I love, you know, it's like Joni Mitchell says, like when she started writing, she had this muse who kind of gave her this inspiration, you know, and Angus Young says when he writes, it's not in play, he gets steered by somebody else. You just think, what's steering you, brother? So it does play a big part, and I mean, as Bach always said, like all music should be glory to God, you know, or it's like it's almost like what he's trying to say. He's just like the conduit of something huge. So,
but even amongst musicians who are not religious, that sentiment also
always comes through. Yeah, with everybody, with everyone.
I don't know where it comes from. It just came. It
flows from me. Yes.
And I think we all have that experience.
Yes.
You know, being an atheist myself, I don't know where to put that, but I think the same thing.
Sure.
There is a...
There's that source.
I hope I'm not arrogant.
No.
It all comes from me.
No, it's not. But when people say first of all, when people say I say, what you listening to? He listening? No, I'm doing my own thing. But like, I mean, who's inspiring you? Or like, it's
it's weird because it's the expression of self and soul is interpretive.
Yes.
And I think my last album that I released last year is called Love Like. I think if you were not to know that I was an atheist and listen to that record, you would say, this guy's religious.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What the hell? And people are very surprised when I say to them, I'm an atheist that prays. I do pray.
Yes.
I don't pray to a god or anything like that, but it's meditation.
It's meditation, and I think more important in meditation is just thanksgiving. I mean, I'm not sure if you do, but just thank.
Absolutely,
thanks,
it's gratitude.
Thanks,
I
gratitude.
say that all the
Gratitude,
time.
yeah.
It's gratitude for just being alive, for just being, having that miracle of life.
Miracle of love and being blessed, when you see people less fortunate than us and you think, what have I done? What have I done to deserve it,
Yeah, no, exactly.
And
I think gratitude in music also is a very important part of music making.
Very
and
much
I don't know
so.
if you have this experience, but musicians that I meet, by far the majority of them are very humble people who know what gratitude is.
Yes, I hear you.
There are musicians, of course, who are not that, and they're not usually my favorite musicians.
No,
but
so it's kind of it's an odd thing sometimes. Some of them make just most beautiful music, but they so like egotistical, and I wouldn't want to spend time with them.
I think we also need a lot more conversations like this.
Yes.
Where someone who believes two completely different things can talk about those things without there being any judgment or hate in that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that lacking in the world today.
Yeah, and that has to change.
Yeah.
We've got to bring both sides together. We've got to reach out. And it was quite interesting. We had a coffee with like a prominent local politician yesterday.
Yeah.
He belongs to the ruling party, but kind of he says beautiful things yesterday. We've got to like bury our egos. We've got to reach out to the guys not where you are in the party, not where you are, or he might be across the political aisle, but you've got to go and reach out to them.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's got to happen. That's got to happen. It's got to, and I think to do it with the music's like, I think that's
because it builds bridges.
Yeah. Reminds me of a beautiful story, like in Northern Ireland, in the heart of the Catholic Protestant plight, where they were at war with one another, which doesn't make sense to me. Serving the same God, but you at war with one another. There was one person who could bring the Protestants and the Catholics together. Every year, this guy from County Cork called Rory Gallagher, he's an Irish blues guitarist. He was the only person who would bring the Protestants and the Catholics together. And for that hour, 2 or 3 hours, he was playing his music. There was peace between these two factions. He was the only person who could do it. Politicians couldn't do it. Politicians never can do it. Well, not always. I mean, we've had our biggest miracle was Nelson Mandela. Bishop Tutu. But just seeing this musician doing it through the music, it's a powerful thing.
Exactly.
I think it's such a powerful spiritual force. I mean, the turn of last century, Stalin in Russia, Stalin, when he came into power, said, if you want to change the way people think, you do it through the music. Or change the way the youth think, you do it through the music. So I think we sometimes underestimate the power of we granted by being blessed to play a musical instrument, and I mean the spiritual force which can connect people. That's more powerful than anything else.
Exactly. Well, on that note, is there anything else you'd like to play for us?
Why not?
Why not?
I'll play a little. This piece is called "When Children Pray."
Okay.
It's nothing more beautiful than watching a child pray, because they're not influenced by anything. They just childlike prayer is the best, and it's like kind of a childlike melody. So I've included it on my new album I've recorded, Maiden of the River. So let me play like a little excerpt from that. Yeah.
Nibs, this has been just brilliant. I love the music, I love the instrument, I love your vibe, your style, and this has just been a fascinating conversation.
It has. It's kind of we know each other so, but we haven't delved deep like this before.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
No, thank you very much for sitting down with me. And I think there's the older I get, the more I really appreciate old friends.
Yes.
That consistency of life.
Yes.
Was that a Paul Simon or Simon and Garfunkel song?
Old friends.
Yeah.
Sat on the
sitting on
book.
Yeah. But Nibs, it's been real, man, and so great seeing you. And we see each other every couple of years, but it's always we're always the same people. It seems.
Yeah, lovely.
It's
as cliche as it sounds, it's like timeless. I hadn't seen you for 4 years, and now I'm seeing you 4 years later, and it's like time hasn't passed, and that's always
we both just have a sentiment or two more of us than we did
yeah,
last
we
time.
did. Maybe a few more grey.
A few more greys, a few less hairs in general, a few more hairs in the ear, but that's about it.
It's cool. Still doing what we love, and that's
exactly.
main thing. And thanks. I mean, your channel's been amazing. I just now going forward that more people get to discover it.
Thank you. Well, this has been real. This has been fantastic conversation. There's going to be a longer episode than usual because I just want to get some of this, wonderful conversation in between us. But thank you for watching, and please please subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. And remember, don't ever stop learning. Bam.
Yeah, that was great. It's great.
Thank you, Nibs. Thank you so much.
It was nice.
Really appreciate it.